November 23rd, Thanksgiving, 6:12 p.m. My mother stood at the head of the table, smiled at 20 relatives, and said, "Olivia, before we eat, why don't you apologize for accusing us of stealing from you?" The word stealing echoed across the dining room. My fork froze mid-air. My uncle looked disappointed. My cousins leaned in. My younger brother smirked. This wasn't dinner. This was a setup. My name is Olivia Grant. I'm 29 years old, and my mom flew me home for Thanksgiving because she thought I'd break under pressure and apologize. She forgot one thing. I keep records. If you've ever been blamed publicly just to protect someone else's image, comment your state below. I want to see how common this really is. And if you believe receipts matter more than reputation, make sure you're subscribed. Because what happened next at that table, no one saw coming. 3 months earlier, I discovered the $187,000 education fund my grandmother left in my name was gone. Not invested, not lost. Transferred into my parents' private business account. When I confronted my mom in August, she smiled calmly and said, "You're being dramatic. Families move money around. Stop trying to make us look bad." Gaslighting always sounds reasonable. What she didn't know was that I had already called the bank's fraud division, and they had already sent me certified statements, stamped, signed, traceable. Back at the Thanksgiving table, my mother folded her hands like she was about to say grace. "Go ahead, Olivia," she said sweetly. "We're waiting." The house smelled like rosemary and polished wood. Everything looked perfect, because my mother is obsessed with how things look, not how they are. I stood up slowly, and instead of apologizing, I placed a thick manila folder in the center of the Thanksgiving table. The room went quiet. My mother's smile flickered, just for a second. "Olivia," she warned softly, "don't embarrass yourself." I opened the folder and read the first transfer out loud. June 14th, transfer, $32,500, from Eleanor Grant Education Trust to Grant Family Holdings. My cousin stopped chewing. I kept reading. August 2nd, $18,000, same account. My mother's voice cut in, light but sharp. "Olivia, that's internal bookkeeping. You don't understand business." There it was, the script. Confuse her, minimize her, make her look emotional. I didn't raise my voice. "I understand enough to know the trust was legally restricted." My uncle frowned. "Restricted how?" That's when I pulled out the second document, Grandma Eleanor's will, highlighted. Clause 4C, I read. "Funds designated for Olivia Grant's education may not be reassigned, borrowed, or leveraged for business use under any circumstances." Silence. My mother's jaw tightened. "Your grandmother trusted us to manage things." I nodded. "She trusted you to protect it." My younger brother muttered, "This is insane." What he didn't know was that I'd spoken to Grandma's estate attorney last week, and he was coming tonight. Right on cue, the doorbell rang. My mother stiffened. "Who did you invite?" "I didn't," I said calmly. "The will did." My aunt actually gasped. My dad stood up too quickly. "This is unnecessary." But unnecessary had already happened months ago, when they drained my account and expected silence. I walked to the door and opened it. "Good evening," Mr. Howard Klein said, stepping inside with a leather briefcase. "I was asked to clarify the trust restrictions." My mother's perfect Thanksgiving expression finally cracked. "This is a family dinner." Mr. Klein adjusted his glasses. "That depends on how you define family." He took a seat at the edge of the table and opened his briefcase. "Mrs. Grant," he said evenly, "did you authorize transfers from a restricted education trust into a private holding account?" My mother looked around the room, searching for control. For temporary use, she said. Mr. Klein nodded slowly. Then, under Section 7A, that constitutes fiduciary breach. The word breach landed heavier than stealing. My father tried to laugh. Come on, we're talking about our daughter. Mr. Klein didn't smile. No, we're talking about a legal instrument. The room felt smaller now. My cousin stared at the paperwork like it might explode. I slid one final document across the table. Bank correspondence, flagged transactions, pending investigation notice. If the funds aren't returned within 30 days, Mr. Klein said calmly, civil recovery proceedings can begin. My mother's wine glass trembled. You would sue your own parents? She whispered. I met her eyes. You accused me of theft first. The turkey sat untouched, the candles burned lower, and for the first time in my life, the narrative wasn't hers anymore. No one reached for the mashed potatoes. Mr. Klein adjusted the documents so everyone could see them clearly. The total withdrawn from the Olivia Grant Education Trust, he said evenly, is $187,000. You could actually hear my aunt inhale. My father tried to steady the room. It was temporary liquidity. We were expanding the business. Mr. Klein didn't look up. Then you should have used business capital, not restricted trust assets. My mother finally snapped. Olivia, do you have any idea what you're doing to this family? There it was again. Not what they did, what I was doing. I folded my hands calmly. I'm correcting it. My younger brother shook his head. You could have handled this privately. I met his eyes. I tried. In August. That's when I read the email, out loud. From Linda Grant, subject, stop making drama. If you continue accusing us, don't expect to be invited home again. The room shifted. My cousin whispered, She threatened you? My mother's face flushed. That was taken out of context. Gaslighting, round 2. Mr. Klein cleared his throat. There is also an additional clause. He opened a separate envelope. Mrs. Olivia Grant included a protective amendment 6 months before her passing. My father stiffened. What amendment? Mr. Klein read carefully. In the event that any trustee misuses funds designated for Olivia Grant, ownership of the Grant family lake house shall transfer fully to Olivia Grant as restitution. The room went completely silent. The lake house. 30 years of summer photos. Christmas cards printed on that porch. My mother's pride. That's absurd, she said, voice breaking. She would never. She did. Mr. Klein replied gently. It was notarized. What my mother didn't know was that Grandma called me the week she signed it. She said, Some people only respect consequences. Back at the table, my father stood abruptly. This is manipulation. No, Mr. Klein said. This is enforcement. My aunt leaned back slowly. So, if the money isn't returned? The property transfer process begins. My mother looked at me like she'd never actually seen me before. You would take the lake house? I didn't blink. I would enforce the will. The candles had burned low. The turkey was cold. The perfect Thanksgiving image? Gone. And for the first time in 29 years, my mother looked uncertain. The first person to break the silence wasn't my mom, it was my uncle. Linda, he said slowly, did you really take her education fund? My mother's eyes snapped toward him. It was a loan. From a restricted trust? He pressed. My father stepped in quickly. We intended to put it back. Mr. Klein didn't look impressed. Intent is not repayment. That's when my cousin, who works in finance, reached for the bank statements. He scanned them. "These weren't business transfers," he said quietly. "These funded a property renovation. And a boat?" Every head turned toward my father. The boat had been posted all over Facebook in July. "Hard work pays off," he captioned it. My mother tried one last angle. "Olivia, you're humiliating us." I let that sit there, because that word, humiliating, had followed me my entire life. Too loud, too ambitious, too sensitive. Now, suddenly, exposure felt like humiliation. I folded the Lake House Amendment and placed it back in the folder. "You accused me of theft," I said calmly, "in front of everyone." My aunt nodded slowly. She did. The narrative had shifted, and my mother felt it. She lowered her voice. "What do you want?" Not, "Why are you doing this?" Not, "How do we fix it?" "What do you want?" Clear. Transactional. I didn't raise my voice. "I want the $187,000 returned in full within 30 days. My father scoffed. "That's not realistic." Mr. Klein spoke evenly. "Then the lake house transfers." The word transfers hit differently this time, because now everyone understood it wasn't a threat. It was a process. My younger brother finally looked at me directly. "You'd really take it?" I met his eyes. "I'd rather have my grandmother's intention respected." Silence again. But this silence felt different. It wasn't tense. It was heavy. Consequences have weight. My mother stood up slowly. "This dinner is over." No one moved, because ending dinner doesn't end documentation. As people began gathering coats, my aunt squeezed my shoulder. "You were right to bring receipts," she whispered. That mattered more than I expected. Outside, as I stepped onto the porch, my phone buzzed. A notification from the bank. Formal investigation opened. Because what they still didn't know was that I had already filed the preliminary report. And this wasn't just about repayment anymore. 30 days passed. On day 28, the wire transfer came through. $187,000. Full amount. No apology attached. Just a memo line. Education Trust reimbursement. The lake house stayed in their name. But something else transferred that month. Power. The bank investigation concluded quietly. No criminal charges. The funds were returned in time. But the internal report flagged improper fiduciary handling. My father's business lender requested a compliance review. 2 clients pulled contracts. Nothing dramatic. Just enough. Reputation doesn't collapse loudly. It erodes. My mother called once. Her voice wasn't sharp this time. "You didn't have to involve everyone." I answered calmly. "You involved everyone when you accused me." Silence. Then she tried one more angle. "We were trying to help the family." I let that sit. Grandma was family. She didn't respond. We haven't spoken since. At Christmas, the extended family group chat was quieter. But something had shifted. My aunt started calling me directly. My cousin asked for advice on opening a trust account for his daughter. My younger brother texted once. I didn't know. I believed him. And here's the truth no one talks about. Holding someone accountable doesn't always feel victorious. It feels steady, like finally standing on solid ground after years of being told the floor was your fault. I invested the returned money under my name, protected, restricted, untouchable. And I drafted my own will last month. Clear language, no loopholes. Because generational patterns don't break themselves. You break them. If you've ever been told you were too dramatic for asking questions, I hope this reminds you. Documentation beats denial. Calm beats chaos. And boundaries don't require permission. I didn't go home for Thanksgiving to apologize. I went home to correct the record, and I sleep very well knowing I did. If this story hit close to home, comment receipts below. I read them. And if you believe accountability belongs at every table, make sure you're subscribed, because sometimes the strongest thing you can bring to dinner is proof.